Okay, well, I think everyone's connected. I don't see anybody else in the waiting room. My name is Brenda Beymer-Chapman. I'm actually the treasurer for the Oklahoma Council for Social Studies, and we're really excited that you've joined us for our first ever virtual conference. We've been able to have lots of speakers we would not normally be able to have because we wouldn't be able to afford them to come and travel, or they may not have the time off to travel. So we're very excited. On our website, we have recorded each session, and so the first 2 nights are already there. So if you missed a session, you can certainly go there, and right on the professional development page, you can click on. And then tonight, we're also recording all of our sessions, and hopefully by the end of the week, we'll have those posted. So once again, we're really excited that you joined us today. I'm going to introduce my co-host today is Pam Merrill, who is also on our board of directors for the council, and she's our webmaster. So all the nice things that are on our website, Pam has been loading and collecting and making for our website. In the chat box, I have dropped a link. David Burton, our vice president, has made an attendance form. And so if you click on that link and fill it out, he will send you a professional development certificate so that you can have that if you need it for your school district or if you need it for points. So once again, I'll put it again in the chat just in case. But you just click on the link and fill out that Google form, and then he will send you a professional development. Once again, thank you for joining us. Pam and I are really excited to share the Oklahoma Social Studies framework. I am the director of social studies at the State Department of Education, and Pam has been the project leader, the project manager for the Oklahoma Social Studies framework for both years that we've been working on it. And so it's a labor of love for her and lots of hard work for all the teachers that have worked with Pam to get this started. So the first thing we're going to talk about is our agenda. We're going to explore the frameworks as they look now. So if you remember in 2019, we had new social studies standards that were adopted by the legislature and the Board of Education. And we put those into play in the 2019 through 2020 school year. The next year, we worked on a companion document. So the frameworks is a companion document that kind of goes more in depth into each objective. And we're going to look at that here in just a minute to show you all that's there for you to look at. We're going to discuss formative assessments for just a minute. We're going to share what Pam and the group is working on this year in year 2. And then we hope that you guys will give us a little bit of feedback of what's there and what other things you would like to see added. So it's kind of a little bit of a give and take at the end, and we hope you'll be able to give us feedback on what you like and what maybe else we need to add. So the first thing I'm going to do, I have a second screen up so I can see if anyone gets knocked off. So if I look to the right, I'm just looking at my screen to make sure everyone's good here. So when you go to the social studies framework page, it's going to look like this. This is a live look. And if you notice, you have all the grades to the left, and to the right, you have lots of other resources. So there's the family guides if you teach pre-K through 6. There's strategies for reinforcing the practices, and there's a state assessment page if you teach U.S. history. So there's lots of also extra things over there. We're just going to click on world history today. And if you click on a grade, here's what it looks like. And so if you remember, we have 2 sets. That we have the standards, which is content. And then we have the practices, which are the skills and things we want our kids to do with the content. And here is a link directly at the top to that. If you click on objective analysis, it's going to look like the standards document. So if you notice, they all have kind of a little blue link. So let's just click on the Renaissance one. And this is what the framework currently has. So we have the overall standard at the top. You have the objective. You have a feature called In the Nutshell. So what in a nutshell is this standard really about? What do we really want to focus on for this standard? Then you have teacher actions. So what might the teacher be doing in the classroom that will help with this standard, with the key concepts of the standard? You also have student action. What would the students be doing in your classroom that meets the key concepts of the standard? And if you notice, we have some highlighted words in those two sections. Those are the practices at work. So how do I combine the content with the practices we were talking about? These two sections give you an idea of how you would do that. So the highlighted words come from our practices. Then we have a key concepts section, which is the teachers thought about this. What are the key things your kids are going to need to know? And then I think a really helpful section, the misconception section. So in thinking about this standard or objective, what might the kids come in with that might be a misconception that you could be ready for? They might not have it, but it's something for you to think about, that if they came in with this misconception, would I have something to kind of explain that or help them come to a better understanding of the standard? And then you see instructional resources. If we click on that link, here are lots and lots of instructional resources. So on the left side, we have lesson ideas. So if you notice, just for the Renaissance, we have several lesson ideas. And each one of those lessons would probably take a class period to do. Maybe two, but probably a class period. And there are many different kinds of lessons in there. Some are from like the Stanford Education group that has ready-made lessons. Some of them might be from another organization, but these are ready-made lessons, maybe a class period. On are more inquiry tasks that might take 2 or 3 classrooms to do. And so those particular ones might be a little longer, might have a lot more sources that you're looking at. And so here are longer tasks. Then we have primary sources and secondary sources. One of the things is that teachers have a hard time with enough time to go through there and collect all the resources you're going to need. So right here at your fingertips are some primary sources that you can use for this objective and some secondary sources that you could use. So you can just go to this page and click on them and they're ready for you to have download, add to your kids' Canvas or whatever system you're working with. So I'm going to go back. Oops, went too far. And I'm going to click on the next one just to show you that it's the same kind of format. The nutshell, teacher action, student action, which combine the practices, key concepts. This would be the Reformation, and misconceptions. And once again, I think the misconceptions are going to be helpful to just think about and be ready for if your kids happen to have those. Once again, lesson ideas. Remember, they're kind of a one-dayer on the left and a longer lesson with inquiry task, primary sources on the right. And then primary sources and secondary sources. So you're going to see that with what, even if we didn't pick your grade level, they're all going to look in this format for what's there currently. I don't know, Pam, do you have anything else you want to add to the current sections? You have to unmute though.
No, and are you planning to show them the live binder of strategies?
Oh, we can. I'll go back. So once again, here's where the grade levels are. And if we go over here, this is what she's talking about. This is a live binder of all kinds of strategies. So if I'm looking at civil discourse, what are ways I can have kids talk about what they're learning? Here's so many for you to choose from, and they all give you directions on how to do that. So if I'll click on one just to show you. This just shows you, it'll be the directions on how to use those. This is also one of the best things about the frameworks, and I hit it 2 times, I apologize. This has so many things that you can use. So here's analysis of written evidence.
And at the bottom, the red tab, Brenda, takes you to 2 other good places for strategy ideas. One is the K-20 Center. One is the K-20 Center, has lots of great strategy ideas, and so does Especially Facing History and Ourselves.
I would say this is one of the most important things I would use, because it just has so many ideas for if you're for civil discourse, for analysis of writing or visual, for authentic writing. And then if you can't find anything you like in those, there's so many more here at the K-20 Center and others. So lots and lots of resources, and it tells you exactly how to do it. So it's an explanation of how to do each one of those. Okay, so one of the things that we didn't get a chance to talk about in the frameworks from the last year's writers was formative assessment. So how do we know what the kids know? Are they getting it? And if you think about formative assessment, it refers to your ongoing process that you engage in with your students when you're focusing on a learning goal, when you're taking stock of where learning is in relation to the goal you want to get to. You take action to move closer to the goal. It's all those things you do along the way. We want to see how they're doing along the way before we get to the end and then figure out, oh, they didn't get something and it's too late to kind of go back and go through that, or we have to take more time. It's that ongoing process of looking to see where their learning is. And so I like this graphic that Pam found. The real goal of classroom assessment is to improve student performance, not merely audit it. We're trying to work with the kids to develop skills, to develop things they're going to use out in the real world for all of their life, not necessarily just to grade things. And so I really liked this. Gradually, students internalize the learning goals and become able to see the target themselves. And they can see, you can kind of have them chart to see how close they are to getting to the goal that you're trying to get to. Such diagnostic assessment gives information to teachers to inform your future lesson plan. So if you see a weakness that's coming up, then you can address that as you go into the next lesson and keep reinforcing that goal. Formative assessments are the way a classroom teacher can check to make sure everyone arrives at the destination of learning. It's just that check along the way, whether you're going to a group to listen to their conversation, or you're having a quick little bell work question to see what they did from yesterday, or all of those things that we think about that we're just checking along the way. So one of the things to think about is this is not used for grading. They deserve an opportunity to learn before they're graded on what they learn. And so formative assessments could be used before instruction starts to find out where they are before you start. And certainly during instruction to see how they're progressing as you go. So it could be used in two ways or 2 different times. And like we talked about, it can come from your observation of them actively learning. So it doesn't have to be something that you are writing for them to fill out. It could be you're listening to their conversation, or if you're doing one of the civil discourse strategies, you can be listening to if they're using evidence, if that's what your goal is. Different tasks are being measured in different ways, and that's why we need a variety of formative assessments so that we can quickly deploy quickly, seamlessly, and we're all not creating an unmanageable workload for you and your students. So like I was trying to give some examples along the way, it could be a bell work or an exit slip. It could be a journal if you use that for reflection. It could be a low stakes quiz if you have a Kahoot quiz that you put up that the kids are working on, or a poll that you're doing if you're on Zoom and you can do a poll to see how their knowledge is going. It could be a quick write. It could be you give them 2 minutes to write what they know about this. Could be a visual representational organization of information ideas. You could ask them to organize their ideas into a Venn diagram or something like that. Individual chats or interviews, you could be going along and observing them along the way in their discussions. You could also interview them one-on-one to see how that's going. You could also do that in your journal if you're kind of doing back and forth. If you do kind of interactive notebooks where you're where they're asking you a question and you're giving information back and forth, that's also a formative assessment. And it could be collaborative tasks. So for example, here is an Oklahoma history standard. And here's what a formative assessment might look like. If we're looking at some different accounts and we create a Venn diagram and note similarities and differences between the two accounts, okay? And then based on information, explain the underlying cause contributing to the series of events. So we're having them look at the accounts, we're having them create a graphic organizer to organize their information. And then based on what they've been learning and from these sources they're looking at, explain an underlying cause that contributed to the events. So it's not something we're grading, but we're just looking at that to see if they're on the right track and meeting our standard. Okay, so why did we talk about formative assessments? Because that's one of the things that Pam and the teachers have been working on to give you models of what that might look like in each of the standards. So we have so many objectives that we can't do one for each one, or else Pam would quit and never speak to me again, because that's a lot. But we can give you examples of what really good ones might look like in different objectives along the way. And so that's one of the things they've been working on. Another thing they've been working on in year 2, and Pam, you can jump in anytime that you want, is they've organized all of the overall standards into units so that you can kind of give you a calendar for how you might divide these up during the year. So unit 1's and this is world history because I clicked on world history a while ago. It's called a learning progression. And so unit 1 would be the big overall standard one. And then the suggested time frame would be 6 weeks. So that's a long time. So I don't know if that really helps you or not, but if you're spending more than 6 weeks on unit 1, then you're probably spending too much time on that particular unit to have enough time to get through. If you notice, we have driving questions, essential questions, and supporting questions. So those are also new to the frameworks and are on the learning progression. The driving question basically turns the standard into a question that you can work with students with. Essential questions are those big ideas that are enduring. They go across content, they go across time, they don't necessarily have one right answer. They're for the students to kind of consider. And so your writers have picked a few essential questions they thought would be appropriate for this particular unit with the objectives they have in mind. And then the supporting questions are more tied to the content. So if you see how this works, driving questions, the standard kind of turned into a question so that they have a question they're considering. Essential questions are those endearing, overarching. I might start my unit with these questions and have them consider the question, is change inevitable, for instance? And then as they're going through the unit, I might come back several times during the unit and see if it's the same answer, they have more information they've kind of thought about to put in this answer. They can see if another student has the same answer they had and kind of progress it And at the end of the unit, you might come back to that question and see what their answer to that question is after you've gone through your unit. And the supporting questions are going to help with those content pieces. They're more tied to the content. That helps you answer the essential question, but the essential question is more overarching. And I don't know if Pam, if you wanted to add.
No, that's good.
One of the things about questioning, it's in our practices very heavily that the kids, you know, learning needs to be intrinsic, and they like to take a question and see what they can answer with it and see what they can find about it. And, you know, you've probably told your kids, I don't know the answer to that. Let's go look for it. Well, this is their chance to kind of learn through these questions and give them a chance to ask their own questions. They may come up with some other questions they want to target. Okay, so here's just another example. If you did Unit 2 of World History, it looks the same format. We have a driving question, essential questions, and supporting questions. The beauty about essential questions is there may not be a different one. You may use 2 or 3 throughout the whole year, but as you do different content, you may add more complexity to their answer about is change inevitable as they're learning about different things in history. And so if you notice the driving again is the standard turned around into a question, and your supporting questions will be different because this is the Reformation, so you're going to be talking about a different set of content objectives. So that was the overview page. Let me click back again. This is the overview page. So if you were to see this whole page, you would see Unit 1, Unit 2, and all the way. I think most of them have 5 to 6 units, right, Pam? So 5 to 6 units, there may be one that has 7, and if you're in elementary, you might have 4. But they'll be broken up into those units. Each of them will have kind of a time frame, and each of them will have these questions on there. So when you get to the progression page, once again, we're going to put the questions on that page. So this is Unit 2, and you're going to have the progression page just for Unit 2. So here's your driving, essential, and supporting questions again. And then there's a prior knowledge. So if you notice, this particular activity is inviting students to brainstorm ideas with each labeled image and topic. So you're kind of assessing their prior knowledge by giving them something to look at and an activity for them to do. And you notice there's also a carousel exercise in that particular one. So you've got your questions that you can start with, and you've got an activity or a lesson that is something to assess their prior knowledge. The next thing on that is a launch task. So it's a way to launch your unit off. And so this is a particular lesson. If you notice, it's a classroom presentation, a graphic organizer. So that could be different in different units, but the next thing's going to be the launch task. So you're going to have on your unit progression page questions, something with prior knowledge to help assess what they know, and then a launch task to start your unit. And notice, by the way, these are links. So on your progression page, you can just click on those and you'll go right to those lessons or links. So then just to get this on my slide, I left out the instructional strategies, but those strategies we were looking at in the binder, the writers will have picked some they think are important for this particular unit, and we'll put them in that particular area. So you'll have questions, you'll have prior knowledge activity, you'll have a launch task, and then you'll have strategies that your writers have picked out they thought would be really great for this particular unit. The next thing is, remember the objective analysis we were just looking at for world history? It would be linked here with all of the things that it had in there. So remember, it had the key concepts, teacher and student actions, misconceptions, primary and secondary sources, and lesson ideas that were smaller and inquiry tasks that were larger. And then the next thing on your progression page is going to be a collaborative engagement idea. So you see, just for this one, it's going to be about the Magna Carta. Once again, I put this slide back in with the arrow to remind you that when we're talking about the instructional practices, we're talking about the ones where that strategy is for reinforcing the practices. So that's where the instructional strategies come from. I just didn't list them on there so I could fit it on the screen. The next thing on the progression pages is going to be those formative assessment ideas. And I know Pam and the writers have worked really, really hard to find different kinds of formative assessment. So it wasn't just the same thing in every unit. And so if you notice on this one, there's already 4 ideas for formative assessment for this particular unit. So there are 4 things to choose from. I think there are 4 different kinds. If you notice, they're already right there to click on. The links are there and it kind of explains. So one of them is going to assess understanding of principles and practices supporting absolute rule using a particular source. And then you've got one on religious movements. So if you read through there, there are different ideas for formative assessment for this unit. If you notice at the very bottom, it's create a headline. So we tried really hard, one, to pick things that are different so that you can have different models so that when you are creating ones for your classroom, you have different ones to look at. I don't know, Pam, if you had any more insight into the formative assessment pieces.
So we tried to offer ideas that would incorporate some primary or secondary sources, would incorporate some different strategies, as you mentioned, but also would be quick enough that you could accomplish in around 5 to 10 minutes worth of class time. So not to be a huge burden and not to be a kind of formal kind of an assessment. There's also in each one of the units an example of how you could use a multiple choice question as a formative assessment, but taking it just one step beyond where students do more than just choose the answer A, B, C, or D.
And I know one of the things we've really tried to model is trying to do authentic assessments, types of activity assessments that kids might do in a job later on in their life or might do as a task later on. And so if you notice, create a headline. So that might be something that they have to do in their job is create a social media post or a quick, tagline for people to be interested in their presentation. So we've also tried to model that particular part of assessment, trying to make it to where they would use these skills in other places. And then, of course, at the end, we have a unit closure idea. And so there's going to be a idea for you to click on that would be a closure activity or closure lesson for this particular unit to wrap all of that up together. And then after this, you would have your summative assessment likely following after that. Okay, so basically what we have done is shown you what is there, what is out there in the frameworks right now, and kind of what's to come. Pam is loading those right now as the writers are finishing that, but they're not live just yet for the year 2 ideas. So those progression pages we just showed you is an example of what one would look like for world history as she's working on it. So hopefully they'll be live later on in the spring, maybe towards the end of the year, so that as you're planning for summer for next year, you'll have all of these resources available. So we would like for you to think about what is most helpful, and is there something else needed that you think for the frameworks that we haven't thought of? So we have a very small group. You're welcome to unmute and give us your ideas that way, or you can put them in the chat. Just let's start with, of the things we were looking at, of the framework that's up. And remember, we had the objective analysis, which had the lesson ideas, the primary sources, misconceptions, key concepts, that, and I can go back to that. What is most beneficial, do you think, for yourselves of the framework that's up right now. And if you give me just a second without being sick, I'll get back up here and link it. So in looking at the framework right now, here's what's up on the first page. If anyone would be brave enough to put it in the chat or unmute and tell us, of the what's up now, what's the most beneficial part to you? Or what would you use the most? That's what the front pages look like, and that's what. Okay, so Joanne said the key concepts. I think I've never taught world history. I've taught U.S. government. So I think that would be really important for me to go to the key concepts and see what is it that I really need for students to get out of this particular objective. So I also think that would be very helpful. Yes, anybody else have? You can unmute if you want.
You asked for primary, and really that would be the primary for me, but also seeing the teacher action. I teach 5th grade social studies. So I was trying to look at my frameworks. I had tried to pull up the website to get my my particular.
Did you say grade. 5th grade?
5th grade, yeah. Okay,
so here, I'll pull it up.
And I think that also the student actions in that, although I was having a hard time finding that, and now I know where it is. Okay.
So here, I'll go backwards and so this is the landing page. When you get to the landing page, and you would click on 5th grade. And then here's the link to the social studies practices if you just want to see the practices themselves.
Right.
If you want to see the objectives themselves, you're going to click here.
Yes.
And then you're just going to click, I'll just click on one here. And that's where you're going to see like that.
Yes. That's awesome. I mean, I know I would pull from the teacher action and the student action as well, but just a quick glance. Social studies is kind of the stepchild of the two things I have to teach, unfortunately. Although I have a minor in this stuff. So I just finding it quickly is really, really helpful.
And just for you, I'll click on, and this is what it looks the same. It would just be that they're for 5th grade. They're lessons and primary sources that 5th grade would be interested in.
Awesome. What great work. Yeah,
and I'll also say that if you look in the secondary sources over here, like for instance, Blood on the River is a novel.
Yes.
So if you were interested in, and I love it, I've used it too, I love it. And so if you're interested in integrating in elementary, we've also given you kind of an idea for something you could do there. And so Carly said misconceptions too, because I also think if I was coming into a grade and I didn't know about, if I was a first year teacher or just new to that grade, I would kind of want to know, okay, for experienced teachers, what have they already had that kids come in with them? I might have to help them think about it in a different way. So I like that too.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I think you'll like when you get into this are the primary and secondary sources, because I know for me, I taught 8th grade most of my time, and just having to go find the sources that you want every time was a lot of time, where now I can just tab this and go to my objective, and there they are. So, and these have already been vetted by other teachers, so I know they're good to use. And a lot of times they're edited down. So if I just need this part of it, so really good. Anybody else have a favorite part that you think is beneficial to you? I will definitely Oh, the clickable links. Yes. So they don't have to search for it when you're reading it. You can just click on it and you've got it. And so that was one thing that I think Pam and I kind of fought for, was to have the links on the page so that you weren't reading page after page after page. And we really wanted it to be on one page, but as we got to loading it, we had so many resources it couldn't fit on one page. So that's why you have the link to the resources on the front page, so we wanted to have as least clicks as possible so that you weren't having to click 8,000 times to get where you needed to go. So we wanted it to be user friendly.
Brenda, I may have late day dense brain here, but after a day of teaching, but I'm on my page looks like your page when I first pull up the content standards for 5th grade. But where are the clickable links? I'm not getting to the page that you've got up. So I've got that. Okay.
Okay, so you're on this page right here.
I am on that page right there.
So if you just click on one of the objectives like that, will it work for you?
Well, mine aren't underlined like yours. I'm wondering if I'm looking at the right thing. I've got the standards pulled up.
So if you're looking, so this is a separate website from the standards.
Oh, that's my problem. Okay.
Okay.
Oh,
so
sorry. What is that link?
It is OK Social Studies.
I just do a Google.
Yeah.
I would just do a Google search for Oklahoma curriculum frameworks. And it'll be all of them, math, English, science, social studies will be right there. And you click on the social studies and you'll get here.
And if you go to the State Department webpage, and there's usually a banner that runs across too.
Yes.
That if you click on
that's actually where I went. And I got something that is just a PDF that has all of the standards of all the grades, but it didn't pull up anything like you have. So I'm
okay.
Looking,
well, let me.
I'm looking again.
I'm gonna go. Did you find it?
Well, I think I got. That was another resource, like a PDF page. I guess I wandered onto, so I could see all of the standards, but I could see nothing clickable.
So now I left our PowerPoint, and this is the State Department webpage. And usually there's a banner that goes across, but I think if you put curriculum framework at the top.
Well, that's kind of the slow way, because you got everything that mentions the 2 words curriculum or frameworks.
Okay, here's what I would do, because it's easier for me if you do educators and social studies. You get to my social studies page, and right on the top of it is the frameworks.
Okay, yeah, and I've seen that page as well. I've actually looked at the framework, but I've never seen all this clickable stuff. So I'm going
to go backwards. So if you go to educators and you do that, you scroll, you're going to hit every single content area. So you can click on, like, science has one, language arts has one, math has one. If you click on social studies, you're going to hit curriculum frameworks, and that should get you to this.
Okay.
And then when you click on 5th grade, it should be live, I hope.
Now you've got, there are underlined like links that look like they should be live. The PDF I had just had none of that.
Didn't have it on there. Okay, there you go.
I wandered into
Sierra was sweet enough to put it in the chat for you too.
Yes,
I just wanted to show you how to get there in case you didn't have that.
Absolutely.
Saved.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So that's what we have there now. And then keep in mind the progression pages I showed you that are going to have the driving question, essential questions, supporting questions, the formative assessments, the launch, and the concluding task. All of that is to come. So it is coming. They're working on that right now. In fact, Pam's been furiously editing some of the formative assessments so that they're able to be put on our site, because we have copyright and all those kind of things. But she's been working on that with the writers. And so by summer, we will have that loaded. So you'll have an extra set of resources to put in.
Awesome. What great work.
Is there anything else that we haven't thought of that you would like to see possibly in the frameworks? One thing about the framework document is that it's not the standards. So the standards, they're passed by or approved by the legislature. They're there for 6 years. So in about 3.5 years, we'll start the process of looking at those again. So that's a stressful proposition. But the frameworks can be edited or added. Like if we find a resource that's just developed this year, we can go in and add it. and we don't have to wait for the standards, or we find something that's not working, like a link gets messed up, we can go fix it, where the standards are just kind of there for the whole time. So is there anything else that you all think would be beneficial that maybe we haven't thought of? And you can unmute and talk to us, or you can put it in the chat. We just want to make sure that it's what teachers need. Okay, well, let me ask you this. What about the things that we're working on? What about the launch tasks, the concluding tasks, the formative assessments, the questions? Which one of those new things do you think would be most beneficial to you in your classroom? I'll go back over here and look at them again so you can see. So this is just the world history one. So you'd have the driving question, the essential question, supporting questions, the prior knowledge activity, the launch task. This is where what's already there would be in. The formative assessments, and then the closure idea. What of all of that new stuff they're working on do you think would be most beneficial to you?
It's hard to pick one. I'm sorry.
So
I know you want a definitive, but it's really hard to pick one.
Sierra says the formative assessment ideas. I think formative assessments are really hard to make.
They are.
And to make one that's really a good one, they're very hard to make. And so having some examples to use for each unit, and then kind of give you an idea of if once we don't have that you need to make, you can kind of use that as a template to make.
And we kind of assumed that most teachers with the formative assessment, they might already be using just a quick question to get out the door, or a quick true false quiz, or a quick thumbs up, thumbs down kind of a quiz. So we didn't include those kinds of formative assessments because we thought they would be things teachers already think about. So we're trying to reach beyond and try to give you a broader variety of ideas. So they might be a quick graphic organizer that kids can give you feedback on. It could be a mini kind of a discussion that you're getting feedback from them, but most of them we did try very hard to use some new strategies that we didn't think many teachers might know about.
Excellent.
And I would say and also the multiple choice question that you will see in the formative assessment ideas, it's there, and the kids are using that to explain why they picked the answer that they did, not answering it, but using it to explain to you so you can kind of see their thinking. So once again, just in case you join, because I know on Zoom that when you join after the chat or you get knocked off, you lose the chat. There is a link to the attendance for today, so that when you fill that out, David Burton will send you a certificate so that you can show you were here if you need that for points. And I also put my email address into the chat. If you ever have trouble finding, like I don't remember where you were to find that, you can email me and I'll be happy to show you how to do that. Or if you have other ideas of things that you'd like to see in there, please, if you're thinking about it, just shoot me an email and we'll try to see if we can add that into, because once again, this is going to be a living document. It's going to be that companion document, and we can go in and do a lot of things with it that we can't really do with the standards. the standards are kind of set for that 6-year cycle. That's a very stressful thing. So it's good that it's not like every year. So, so once again, this is recorded today so that if you want to go back and look at something or look how to get to something that we were doing, you can go to the OCSS website. So I'm going to put that in the chat. It's okay. It's OKCSS.org. If you go to if you go to OCSS.org, you're going to get Ohio, which has great stuff, but it won't be the Oklahoma stuff. So Ohio is OCSS and we're OKCSS. And on the professional development page, you will find links to all of the ones we've done so far. And in a few days, we'll have the ones that we've done today up for you to view. And there's all kinds of resources on the OCS website also for assessment ideas, for resource ideas, all kinds of things on that website also. So go check that out. So anybody else have any questions that you'd like to share with us about anything social studies?
We are always looking for new resources. So if you find something you found successful to use in the classroom that would be free for other teachers to use as well, or if you've developed something that you have found effective, just send them to Brenda and we will be happy to add ideas to the frameworks that can be changed, as she mentioned. Anytime we can keep it growing.
And that's the thing, we're putting up free things. So we don't want to put up anything that would cost teachers anything. These are free resources to use. But as she said, we welcome any more resources that you found while working, because new things come up all the time. Okay, then, well, we appreciate you joining the Oklahoma Council for Social Studies and making our first ever virtual conference a success. Once again, in the chat is the attendance if you need a professional development certificate, and David will send it to you. And recordings will be up later this week. So if you wanted to see this one again or see any of the other ones there was some great ones today, including our NCSS president and an NCSS newly elected board member. And Joe did actually, his session is on assessment. How do we assess in social studies? So if you're looking for more ideas about that, you can watch that one. And I know Stephanie was talking about media literacy and how to look at primary sources and know if they're really credible. So that would also fit into things we were doing today. So I know those two sessions would be also good for the things we were talking about. And we appreciate very much. I know how tired everyone is, especially if you're doing virtual and you're sitting all day long in front of a computer, or you're having to juggle virtual and students in your classroom. It's very stressful. We appreciate all the hard work you've been doing this year to make learning a success for your kids. So thanks for joining us, and